Well, welcome everybody to the MCSS Spring Webinar Series, Uncomfortable but Necessary Conversations. My name is Dave Johnson. I'm the current president of the Michigan Council for the Social Studies for another month at least. And I'm also the District 2 representative for MCSS and the head of the Online Learning Committee. I'm your host this evening. We'll get started in just a few moments, but before we do, a couple of quick announcements. I've mentioned before that this is part of an ongoing series that we've had, and we finally got the last one up. So, we've got Marshall this week, who I'll talk about in just a minute, but on May 18th, we'll conclude this leg of the series with a session entitled From Controversial to Complex, Building Skills for Successful Conversations. And what's great about this one is this will be how to have successful conversations about any topic in your classroom. And the group that we'll be bringing in, Liberating Structures, will be giving teachers who attend some tools for doing just that. So feel free, it's on the spring webinar webpage. Feel free if that piqued your interest, and there'll be some emails coming about that next week. None of these offerings would be great without the support of our fantastic presenters. They've given their time and their expertise to come to us this spring. We thank them. We thank Marshall for the time that he's spent preparing and getting ready for us. And we've been working with them right up to the wire. So, this one is an important conversation that will continue in future webinars in the future. And we're pleased to have everyone we were able to get around this time. A few quick housekeeping items. We were unable to apply for sketches for this offering. Apologies for that in advance. I will take full credit if you want to send me a nasty gram later. Please make sure your microphones are muted while our presenter is presenting. As quiet as you may try to be, fingers on keyboards and shuffling of papers around on your desk are often picked up by microphones. Feel free to unmute if the presenter asks you to, and you can always type questions in the chat, which I'll be monitoring throughout tonight's session. And with that out of the way, let's meet our awesome presenter for the evening. Marshall Collins. What to say about Marshall? He is the school health coordinator and social studies teacher consultant for TDA ISD. He's also heavily involved in the anti-racism work in the Traverse City area. He was born in northern Michigan, but he traveled back and forth from Florida with his parents as migrant workers throughout his childhood. Marshall taught in the classroom for 10 years at Northport Public School and is now he's finishing his 10th year at TDA ISD and has been a support for social justice in the Traverse City area, working with law enforcement and schools. On a personal note, I've known Marshall for 10 years in my work across northern Michigan, and when we decided on the series for the spring offering, I couldn't think of a better person to help us continue this conversation with MCSS. Marshall is a Class A human being who we are lucky to have with us tonight to share his story. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn things over to Marshall. Marshall, take it away, my friend.
All right. Good evening, everyone. All right, like Dave said, I'm Marshall Collins. I'm the instructional service specialist for school health here at Northwest Education Services, formerly known as TDA ISD. Ooh, Molly, I see it. I see it. You know, it's contagious. It's contagious. So, like Dave said, I've been here 10 years. I don't know, could be 11. I have no idea how long I've been here. You know, they all start blending in together. But I'm going to share with you guys my story of growing up in Northport in northern Michigan as a person of color, as a Black man, as a Black youth. Once again, this is my story. Everyone has their own, different story, but this one is mine. And if you have any questions, I like to leave my presentations strictly open for dialogue. So if you have any questions, raise your hand, put it in the chat. I think Dave is monitoring the chat. So we'll stop right then. I'll stop right then and I'll answer your question right away because that helps drive the conversation. Again, and I thank you guys for being here. I don't know what kind of steps you have going on in your school, but this right here is an important step, just listening and having the conversation. So thank you all for being here. First, I would like to do a land acknowledgement. We stand here on Turtle Island, our precious earth, this beautiful land of Michigan, cherished and maintained for generations by the Anishinaabe people. We wish to recognize those traditional land we are gathered upon today as the land on which the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians have resided for thousands of years. To recognize the land is an expression of gratitude and appreciation to those whose territory you reside on, in a way of honoring the Indigenous people who have been living and working on the land from time existing beyond the reach of memory. It is important to understand the long-standing history that has brought us to reside on the land and to seek to understand our place within that history. We thank the Anishinaabe people for allowing us to be here today. All right, so as I've been talking about this and doing some speaking engagements, I like this quote: tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. So today I want to make sure that you guys are involved in the conversation. And like I said before, if you have any questions, let me know. But I'm also going to ask you to be involved past these conversations as we leave here today. All right, so I like to play a game. It's called, I know you guys have played Finding Waldo before or something like that. So I like to play the game, Can You Find Marshall? This is my senior class from 1995. Can you find Marshall? All right. And yes, this is in the yearbook, and they did do it in black and white. And yes, that's me, my wonderful class of 19. But as you see, it was it was a pretty white class. We had one Indigenous person and one Hispanic person. So the three of us made up the BIPOC population in that class. This picture will come back around again later. Not the same picture, but again, this is in 1995 when I graduated, aging myself now. So a little bit of time to get uncomfortable. I'm going to show you some clips. I'm going to show you a couple clips from the movie 42. There was just so much in that movie. If you haven't seen it, it's the Jackie Robinson movie. There's just so much in that movie that deals with a lot of things. All right, so the first one I'm going to show you is Don't Say It. All right, don't say it.
What's this nigga doing for you all that you let him drink out of the same water fountain as you? Huh? I hope you don't take showers with him, because you're going to be a mess. Hey, nigga, you like white women? Huh? Hey, which one of these Dodger wives are you climbing on tonight? Time! Oh, wait, time out. Hold on, he's got to take a nap. Hey, which one is it? I think I know. Dixie. Sorry, Dixie. I hate to be the one to tell you. I saw her walking earlier with a little bit of a bow in her step. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. He looks like a nice boy. All right, boy? Come on, nigga, nigga, nigga.
2 men on for Robinson. Here's the pitch from Leonard. 1 on, and it's towering into his pop-up. Seminick settles under it.
Hey, is that a home run? Yeah. If you played in an elevator shaft.
Ken Korn, and Robinson is out.
You don't belong here, nigga. You hear me? Why don't you look in the mirror? This is a white man's game. All right, get that through your thick monkey skull.
Look at me, baby. Look at me, baby, look at me.
So I'm gonna talk about this one real quick. I'm gonna play the next one. and then open it up for us to have conversation. And so the part where I say, don't say it, why not? I get asked a lot, well, how come Black people can say it and we can't? You know, it's one of those things of for me, it's one of those things of privilege, you know, where somebody else can do it and I can't, why not? You know? And so I would be lying to you if I said I've never used that word before. Like I said, I lived in Florida. I lived in a predominantly Black community. When we said it, it was a term of endearment. It was like saying, what's up, my brother? How you doing? But as I moved here, I got that out of my vocabulary because it was one of those things again, is that, you know, I don't want to give someone a reason to say it. So I took that out of my vocabulary so they can't say, well, Marshall said it, so I can say it. So I took that out of my vocabulary. But the point that I want to get at is that when a white person says it, that's the face that we see. That's the tone that we see. And that's the hatred that we feel. You know, so with even the history of the word, sometimes I'm like, I can't believe I still got to explain it. But since people want to know, I make sure that that I try to explain it the best I can. All right. And the next clip I'll show is racism and hatred, a top mentality.
How many times do you think Pee Wee's gonna score today?
Well, I don't know, son. I remember when I was a kid, I saw Honus Wagner play, scored 3 times that day. I just have to wait and see.
Wow, that would be great.
Cincinnati fans expressing their displeasure as the Dodgers take the field. Greg Robinson at first, Brad Eddie Stanky at second, Buddy Jorgensen at third, and the captain, Pee Wee Reese at short.
So for me, that was 2 powerful clips. So I just want to open it up, open the floor up for discussion, thoughts, questions.
Well, that second one definitely brought me back to my childhood because I grew up in a very white space and didn't realize until later in life how bigoted that white space was. And, you know, maybe not the outright messages such as that one, but all the I don't know what the right word is, but just, you know, like I was taught, like if you're walking down the street, you know, and there's a black guy coming, you better move to the other side because there's, you know, it's going to be violent if you don't, right? But that was another outright actually spoken one, but there were so many unspoken messages of jokes and that kind of stuff. So that second one definitely brought me back to my childhood where I can just, even some of the songs that we were taught, but at the same time, we were also taught Jesus loves the little children, all the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in sight, but yeah, we didn't live that, right? So but I didn't see that until I moved out of that white space and wound up in a very mixed race setting that I started to evaluate. And so I'm a teacher educator now. I taught for 28 years, but it's like trying to teach that going into a different space. I don't know if you can speak to that, but how do we, you know, we can read so much but how do you begin to unlearn some of the things that maybe people don't even see that they, right? Do you know what I'm saying? I'm kind of rambling, but.
I think maybe I understand it a little bit. Are you talking about how do you get past your your biases that you already have that's been ingrained.
Yeah, when you don't even know that they're a bias, right? You don't examine them. Like, how do we, and not saying that I'm all there, but right? But yet, you know, I have family members that basically won't speak to me now because I have a Black Lives Matter out on my lawn, you know, and this year has been terrible. I mean, it's like caused this rift of like, they won't even speak to me because of that, right? So what do you do, right? Do you have any suggestions?
For me, I enjoy my life. I have siblings who believe a different way as me, as kind of like some of your families, and some people like, you've realized that, yeah, you know, it's a way of thought, but the only thing that we can do is, you know, show them how we care for everyone. You know, if you know what I tell my family, if you choose not to, that's you. But at the end of the day, when you come over, there's going to be a chair for you at the dinner table. Just because they choose to do that, that isn't a choice that, you know, you have to make yourself. And so you keep doing what you feel is the right thing. And, you know, with your students or your kids, you change those biases, and that's how we make a difference.
Do you have a way to enter those uncomfortable conversations? You seem like a very gentle, wonderful man in just a short little time that I'm sensing this gentleness. I don't know, what is the way to enter that uncomfortableness without getting riled up and angry because what they come at you with? Like, well, how do you do that?
First, you have to, for me, I just prepare myself. I know where this conversation is going to go. So I prepare myself and I say, all right, Marshall, this can be a teaching moment. This can be a learning moment for you and for whoever we're having this conversation with. And from my my openness to talk about how I feel, I've had a lot of conversations in the past year with people that just have said, thank you for just listening and explaining. Now I have a better understanding. And sometimes it helps when they're not hearing it from a white person. Like, you know, when I sit down and talk to them and I explain it, oh, I get it, I understand it. And it could be because I have more passion and emotion behind it. But, you know, that's where it's come from. A lot of people don't understand and get it until it affects them. So, example, I had a conversation with a older lady this past summer, and she was like, can I just talk to you? You know, I heard you speak at the Black Lives Matter rally. Can I just talk? And I said, sure. And her problem was she had put something up on her Facebook, and someone had made a negative comment about people of color, and her very close niece saw it and was upset at her for not responding and standing up for it, because her great niece was a person of color. It was a biracial child. And so the woman was so upset. She was like, I just need to talk. I need to understand so I want to have a better relationship with my niece and my great niece. But I just want to have the conversation to make things better. And so we talked for about an hour, and I think she made some progress. So, I mean, that's what it is. Some people don't get it until it slaps them in the face. Like, I want to see my great niece or my grandson or granddaughter.
Thank you.
So Marshall, one of the things you asked, you know, just the overall with the video thoughts, reflections, I had the exact opposite experience of Linda. I grew up in East Lansing, which, you know, it's very diverse, and moving to Northern Michigan was kind of culture shock for me because it's just not up here. So, when you were talking about, particularly the word and its usage, I was right there. I was like, that's a word I don't use. That is not a thing but I understand that it can come up in these situations, but not here. And so in terms of my reaction to the video clips, like whenever I see things like this, even portrayed in a movie over historical events, that just makes my heart sink and puts this really uncomfortable feeling in the pit of my stomach, because it's not a word we use. It's not a word we should use. I shouldn't say it's not a word we use, because there are plenty of people who do, but it's not a word that should be used. And so for me, I felt primarily throughout the clips very uncomfortable that it was being used as often and in the context that it was.
Any other?
Yeah, I think like in listening to the things, of course, so many thoughts, but I think anything that's done, like you said, that causes harm, like isn't something we want to do. If it's something that's disrespect, if it's something that's harm, it's not something I want to do. And I don't want to do that in my family setting or in a public setting. I don't. And when you look at like, how do people, like with the one with the kid, right? People do learn from their families what they learn. And that's why it's such a privilege and so important to be able to be educators, because we can work with young people. And I think as you're talking about, like, I love this series with the social studies, like the stories we tell, because it really is about seeing the people that we're seeing, like they're people. And like when you referred to the song about, Jesus loving everyone, I grew up in a family of, well, first my father was a scientist and then a minister, but so like it's very much embedded that everyone is my family. Like they're my brothers, they're my sisters, like you are my family. So a lot of times my issue is not necessarily always seeing the issue, because like in my house, maybe the person living with me or with us for a time, maybe they were from different places in Africa, right? So maybe the man who lived with us for a long time was from the Ivory Coast. And maybe, maybe my closest friend, her skin didn't match mine, but then so what? Like, so to be able to see some of the things, because I'm so used to looking at like the person as the person. So to be able to think about the way that life can be challenging or hard just because an individual walks into a place but has to have a whole different view on protocol and safety because of the body they're walking in. And that can be a challenge. And I think that's really hard too. And sometimes it's really like I get surprised, which like some people I think maybe walk in circles that so closely resemble themselves. It's hard when they step into a different circle. And yeah, just to be able to have like to know that this is, like you said, your niece, your nephew, your brother, your neighbor, like your family. So I don't know, when I see those things, I have to turn my video off because I'm just how can we not love each other? Like,
thanks, Michelle. Aaron?
Yeah, hi, Marshall. Thanks for being here tonight. I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us. you know, thinking about those videos, obviously it's going to make us uncomfortable because we're all educated adults and we're here tonight and we know better. You know, and the thing that really resonated with me was in that second video was you know, the young boy watching the hate speech come out of his dad's mouth. You know, I teach 6th grade, so does Andrea, you know, and that boy seems like he'd be really close in age to somebody that would be sitting in my classroom. So I think sometimes some of the things that I hear come out of the mouths of my students, and I'm like, oh my gosh, where are they picking this up from? You know, and then you meet parents at conferences or something, you're like, oh, okay, the kid makes a lot more sense to me now. But, you know, one of the things that we really talk about is perspective, you know, and our perspective is shaped by our experiences. So when you look at that boy, you know, his experience is one of confusion, watching his dad say these hateful things. And you can see this internal struggle with the kid, like, you know, maybe this isn't something I'm supposed to do, but my dad's doing it, so it must be the right thing to do. And it really shows how that, you know, that cycle of hate and violence just gets perpetuated, and how it's so hard to break. Very powerful, both videos. I think it was great. And it's, you know, some of the points that other people have brought up, I think are very, very valid also. But.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank everyone for sharing on that piece and being vulnerable, because it is a pretty, you know, they're 2 emotional clips. So thank you.
I was just going to concur with Aaron. That's the first thing that hit me, especially, well, the first one was just very difficult to watch, but the second one with the young boy, that's the first thing I thought of, was that, you know, our students, you know, they whatever they're living with or living around, you know, they bring that into the classroom. And it's amazing how much that you can, I guess, learn or understand where a kid's coming from based on these comments that they make that very much sound like something regurgitated from, you know, their parent or an adult in their home or in their family. And I think that's probably one of the things that, you know, keeps reminding us of our role as educators is, again, trying to expand their vision, expand their experience, expand their horizons with, you know, different cultures, different groups, different people, different misconceptions, different perceptions as well. And instead of saying who is right and who is wrong, just trying to understand that there's, you know, a lot of different viewpoints, and how do you navigate through that? We as adults have trouble with it. So certainly, you know, kids are going to struggle with it. And that's why I think it's so important for us to be those kind of role models where we can show that things can be uncomfortable, you know, even for us as adults. So, but I appreciate you sharing that. One of the things, we used to watch that Disney movie, Ruby Bridges, and that was, it's such a well done movie, but I always had to, felt that we needed to have some really good conversations before the movie starts. And I warned them that, you know, you're going to hear and see things that might make you feel uncomfortable in that. And I tell them it's okay, because, you know, it's difficult to watch this little, you know, first grader go through that and be yelled at, similar to what we just saw in the movies. You know, she was called all kinds of names in that. And we do talk about that. And that was one of the perspectives I tried to get my students to look at was, can you imagine, you know, being a little kid and having to go to school and all these adults are yelling at you and holding signs and saying things. You know, imagine having to go into school and then try to take a spelling test or, you know, something like that. Like, so I think sometimes when we can give our kids opportunities in a safe way to try to at least see what's happening or gain someone else's perspective, then I think that helps us to allow our students to grow more with their level of maturity and their level of understanding of others.
Yes, thank you. Stacy?
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to make our kids uncomfortable from time to time to teach them empathy, to teach them how, when you feel uncomfortable like this again in the future, how are you going to respond? How to recognize the uncomfortable feeling and take the steps in the right direction rather than following the crowd. I think as educators, we want to not necessarily make everything comfortable, but we need to have those uncomfortable moments. I tell my kids throughout the year, history is there for us to learn from, and if you're uncomfortable, that's even better, because then we will learn to take the steps in a different direction to make things better. And that really became prevalent, especially in the time that we are living in now. Making them uncomfortable, to me, is a good thing. That way we can have those clarifying conversations, those I don't understand because I'm not whatever. We have a very small minority race. We have a very small population of minority races. So my kids don't really get a chance to do the face-to-face seeing certain things. And I think if we can make them sometimes as uncomfortable as possible to look and say, hey, these are also human beings, these are also people, that's kind of our time to say, you put yourself in their shoes. It might be impossible, but we need to have these uncomfortable conversations so that they know how to respond when they're met with those uncomfortable situations as adults.
I have a wondering, and I hear it and I understand it and I know it's our topic. And I've seen it in classes and conversations, and I know that the idea and the point is like to get into these things that are like unspeakable and to speak of them, to bring the conversation around, to make them like to come to where we want to go. But I wonder sometimes with the things humans have done that I can't hardly, like, how do people do this to people? And yet they do. People do things that are horribly horrible. And I wonder if sometimes with the uncomfortable conversations, do we also go to the point of, okay, we're here, but it's not okay. And now we're not going to stop in this discomfort of this is bad, but now we have to move into what are we going to do to make it better? Do we also go, because I've seen people stop there in the pain and leave it. And I wonder where like my youth go with that. Like, then where can we go to, like, what will we do to make the difference, and how will we, and then move together?
Right. Well, you have to, for me, first of all, you like everyone was saying, you got to start having those uncomfortable conversations within your classroom. And yet, for me, you just got to do it. You know, I remember when we were talking about slavery in 8th grade, you know, cons and pros of slavery. There's no pros. There's no pros to slavery. For some people it is, you know, but then think about it. That was something that we had to do. Cons of slavery, cons and pros. You know, it's like they don't really talk about slavery, human beings, real people living underneath those conditions, being treated the way that they were. chained, shackled, captured. These are people. And so those are the conversations that need to start happening within the classroom instead of talking about, you know, what the benefits of slavery was. There was no benefits of slavery because we are still dealing with the repercussions of slavery right now. This is why we have to have those conversations right now. Nothing has benefited from it. For some, but those some don't want to say how privileged they are because they worked hard for it. No, yet my ancestors worked hard for it. Sometimes I get into a moment where I just start preaching, so I'll try to get back to the subject.
You're the presenter, you take it.
All right, so, you know, here we go. Thinking about in your classroom, we'll just do one because we only really have 20 minutes left. So on a scale of 0 to 5, how comfortable are you talking about race within your classroom? You can throw it in the chat. All right, can I get 2 people to talk about why they chose what they chose?
Well, I didn't choose a number because I just couldn't, but because it depends on who's in the room. But I have found that sometimes it's hard. It's easier when it's like all white people. I find myself much more comfortable than when I'm in and I'm talking about my pre-service teachers right now, when there's 1 or 2 Black people, it makes me uncomfortable because I don't want them to be the token Black person, you know, having to speak for everyone. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I address uncomfortable conversations. But I find it hard when there's only, you know, I don't know if anybody else has that situation.
Well, I can speak to that one a little bit, just growing up in that situation, is to really have that conversation and make those students feel supported also. You know, I'll go when you start reading, you know, Huckleberry Friend, Mark, you know, all those things, and the word pops up. You know, me being the only Black person in the class, everyone turns and looks at me. Do I say it? Do I not say it? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, don't say it. But me as a teenager, that's not my job to have to do that. For me, the teacher missed a teachable moment right then and there to have that discussion within the classroom. But it was a choice to where she looked at me and said, well, Marshall, what do you think? I mean, I'm not going to do your job for you, was what I really wanted to say. But, you know, she missed an important teachable moment right then for everybody in the classroom. Can we get one more person to share?
Yeah, I'll share. I put a 5, just like Dave. I like Dave's reasons, though, about his students are social studies teachers. But for me, I always preface with the kids, you know, do you appreciate honesty? And if they say, yeah, I'm like, all right, here we go, buckle up. And sometimes honesty is uncomfortable, but it is what it is, you know. And I think we have to be very intentional with the language that we use, the things that we say and how we say it in the classroom, to let the kids know that it comes from a place of love, and to let them know that it's okay to question things that they hadn't thought of that way before, you know, because when you think about the way that history is written and taught, you know, it's the clean version, and history has been anything but clean. And the more kids realize that, I think the more comfortable they become with asking those questions about, you know, well, why? You know, why was that okay? Why did people do that? And people do bad things for bad reasons. And, you know, it's got to be okay to talk about that, but it has to be done in a safe space also.
Right. Safe space is very important. All right, so this telling a little bit more about me. You know, my parents were migrant workers. We traveled from Central Florida, Mount Dora, to Northport, Michigan. You know, did it all the way up to until I was a freshman. So I was 15. So going into my freshman year, my parents they were messing with me at first because it was like, well, we're going to leave next week. Well, we're going to leave next week. Well, we're going to leave next week. And so finally I knew that we weren't going. Snow was on the ground. I'm like, my parents usually escape by this time. And I knew we were staying. When that happened, you know, honestly, I was never a bad kid, but my grades dropped. I was kind of mischievous in class, not bad. I'm the type of person that I'm the student that toes the line with you. Well, do I send them to the office? Do I not send them to the office? So that was kind of me. And I was really, really bothered, upset. My cousin had come up with me from Florida because my aunt didn't want him, you know, in that area. So she was like, go on up there with Reverend Collins. And so he came up there with us, and, you know, we had each other, but that was it. You know, no one else looked like us, dressed like us, listened to the same kind of music we listened to, really understood us. So it was basically he and I. And then after the sophomore year, he was like, Keep, I got to go. He called me Keep because I was the keeper on the soccer team. He said, I can't do this anymore. And so really I was left, you know, he had to do what was right for him to be with his family. But, and so I ended up being at the school, being the only I was the only Black person in the school. We had a K-12 school, really small school. And, you know, there was multiple amount of issues that I had to deal with. And so I found this, actually I refound it today, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna put it in the slide. And so this is my parents, and it's a clipping from, I think, the Covenant Church, and it's from 1970. So it just gave a little history about, my dad was a pastor. And so my mom played the piano and sang. My dad preached, and, you know, as it said somewhere in there, although the form of migrant service and the manner of singing was very different from the church's tradition, the whole services must have seemed just as strange to the visitors. And so my parents was get down Holy Ghost type of church, Southern church, you know. It came to the point that when my parents came into to the church, people would come and take the flowers off the piano because she would hit that piano so hard that you'd see the flowers just get ready to shake off. But, you know, it was a good old time that we had, and it was something that the churches up here wasn't used to. And this is a little history of my family, and what I tell people is that this is something that I just found out probably 8 years ago, that my great-great-grandfather, who was, you know, I'm not going to say obviously, but he was a slave. And when he and we can't go back any further than that, because he said the last thing he remembers as a child is his dad being taken away from him. So no, that's as far as we go. And so this is just a little timeline of, you know, my great-great-grandfather. That's my grandmother back there. This is my dad. This is me. And then this is on my dad's other side of my mom. And so we actually, my family in Maryland, my dad grew up in Maryland, so did my mom. There's a place called Jonestown, and that's where my dad's side of the family is at. And like I said, when my great-great-grandfather was freed, he became a sharecropper. And then from there, when the dude died, he gave that land to my family. And so it's called Jonestown, and it was part of the Underground Railroad. And I don't know if you guys heard of the Harriet Tubman Byway before. You can go on there and you can just go through the map of the Underground Railroad in Maryland, and Jonestown was a stop, and my cousin actually gives a speech on it. So it's actually pretty cool. And like I said, this is history that I'll be 45 this year, but I'm just learning like my family's history 8 years ago. So I found this picture. It's Brethren High School from 1955. Mine was Northport Public School in 1995. So 40 years later, it's one, not two. So I was like, man, things have to change. Said things have to change. And, you know, one of the discussions I had with my supervisor is, I said, how do we get more teachers, coaches, administrators up here that are people of color? And then I emailed him back at the same time and I said, what person of color would really want to come up here and be a coach, teacher, administrator, because of some of the, especially recently here in Traverse City area, some of the things that have popped up in the news that has went national. Okay, we had a commissioner using the N-word, blaming Corona on all the N-words in Detroit, and he doubled down on it and continued to say it. We had a teacher get an uprising up here because she did had the kids do a lesson on white privilege. And then just last week, we had the Snapchat slave trade incident. And so, you know, if I'm a person of color and I'm looking to come up here for a position, I'm probably like, honestly, I'm like, hell no. You know, no, I'm good. I'm good. And, you know, driving up here to Traverse City, you know, I was in Florida for spring break. We had to travel through some towns. And I will tell you, I see more Confederate flags driving through some of the areas up here in northern Michigan than what I saw in Florida. And that to me is just, the fact that we have to see it, period, is crazy. But I thought we were in the North. And it's 2021. All right, so experiencing racism firsthand. Right away, I started thinking about in the past year, with everything that has gone on in our society, I started thinking about, you know, the George Floyd incident, you know, just so much stuff. And then I'm driving and I literally break down in tears. I start crying because so many, they call them microaggressions, so many microaggressions has happened over time to where they happen so much that we get used to them, that I get used to them, and I just put them somewhere in the back of my head. It is what it is. That person's ignorant. You know, for a while, we let ignorant be our excuse. You know, about 7 years ago, just walking down Front Street with a friend of mine, somebody yells at the car, "White power." You know, and he's like, "Did he really say that?" And I'm just walking, "Yep, he said it." And, you know, I can't say we have to say I, because this is my story. And once again, I'm not speaking for everyone. I'm just speaking for me. I got complacent with things like that to where I was like, well, you know, it is what it is. We're in northern Michigan. That happens, you know. And just probably recently in the past 4 or 5 years have I really started speaking out on it. Now, it's not like I let people say anything to me and get away with it. I'm usually very vocal about my feelings at the appropriate time and place, but you know, it's starting to remember all the things that happen rather than the bigger things. So the first story I tell is about friends. You know, if I go into schools, I talk about this part. It was when the first time in Northport, I was with a friend and another friend of mine called me the N-word. And my closest friend to me, who was like the first person who pulled me in, he said, he started laughing and giggling. He was like, are you really going to let him say that to you? Or are you going to let him get away with that? You know, all that stuff. And so at that point, I kind of turned, I looked at him, and, you know, I just walked away. So one of my best friends became not too much of a friend for me, because I was more upset to him for not standing up for me than the person who actually said it. The person who said it, I could be about, but he was my good friend, and I would have his back, his side, whatever, at any point in time. And at that point in time, when I need him, he wasn't there. So community, I talked to you guys a little bit about how I faced it in the community. And, you know, I hate to say it is what it is, but because it isn't. Right now, when it happens, I just call it out for a racist act of what it is. But, you know, I remember being younger, being followed around the store, and being the person that I am, the goofy dude I am, I would actually try to hide from the person that's following me and try to play hide and go seek. And then she would like spend so much time trying to find me. And then, you know, I could see her like hiding, like staring at me, head peeking in and out. But that, you know, that was one of many stores. That was just one of many stores to where, you know, boy, why are you here? You got anything? You got money? You know, and now I have grown people asking me if I'm from Detroit. Like, Detroit is the only place in the world that have Black people. And they say, hey, where are you from? Detroit? And so they ask me a question, don't give me an opportunity to answer it, and assume that I'm from Detroit. And, you know, when I tell people that story, it's like, no, I don't believe somebody would actually, I don't believe somebody would do that. And so I tell the stories all the time, but this is probably one of the best ones, is that I'm a huge Black Friday shopper. You know, we eat early, I watch football, and then I go sit in line. So I'm wearing my Detroit Lions jersey, I'm wearing my Detroit Lions hat, and a lady comes up to me and she goes, do you play for the Detroit Lions? And I couldn't hold back. I said, yes. I just finished a football game in Detroit. I took a plane all the way up to Traverse City, Michigan, so I could shop at Walmart. And the friend I was with just looked at me, and her eyes got big, and she realized how dumb of a comment that was. But that's the everyday stuff that just drives me crazy. And, you know, just me being the person I am, a lot of times I switch it around into a joke, but it's also messing with the person's psyche to get them to think a little bit. So in school, there was one time that I had to go to the bathroom, and the teacher wouldn't let me go to the bathroom. It was a sub. I said, I really need to go to the bathroom. I said, no. I said, all right, if you don't let me go to the bathroom, I'm going to go on my own. I'm just going to walk out of the classroom. So either you got the choice to let me go, or I'm just going to leave. And so he said, all right, you got 5 minutes. I said, right, like that's going to happen. I had to go to the bathroom. So he watches me all the way down the hall until I go into the bathroom. And this guy decided to leave the classroom of 18 other people and come look underneath the stall to make sure I was in there. That's what I had to deal with. I can tell you one of the fun pieces I had of it. When I left Florida, I wanted to be a football player, and I wanted to play baseball. I come up to Northport, all they have is basketball and soccer. And I remember being, you know, going into gyms, and people was like, oh, you could see it on their eyes. They got a Black guy on their team. Like, everyone is in awe. And, you know, I could jump out of the gym, no problem and anything. But when they saw me shoot my first shot, they were like, oh, I couldn't dribble, I couldn't shoot. I eventually got better, but I knew, like, I could feel it as soon as I walked into that gym. Everyone was like, oh, here we go. They got a black guy. He's going to be pretty good. And I wasn't that good early on. I got better, yes. But, you know, I always enjoy doing that because I would show off during the layup line because that's the only time I had. After that, it was over. So I know I'm running out of time. And so some of the stereotypes I dealt with is, as I said, my dad was a pastor. And so he was born in 1930. I was the youngest of 8. And so he was really old school. It's like, Marshall, don't rock the boat. Just, you know, he was really happy with where we were at. And he did his activism behind the pulpit all the time in the way he lived his life, you know. And, you know, the biggest example that I can give is one time outside the church, a lady was calling him the N-word over and over and over again, just yelling it, like hate, just yelling it. And he looked at me and I was in the car. And he just turned around to the lady and he said, I'll pray for you. And he turned around, got in the car, and we drove off, and we did not have to have a conversation because I knew exactly what he was doing. Because once he said that to that woman, she had nothing else to say. He shut her up. He kind of humiliated her by 3 simple words: I'll pray for you. I'll pray that all that hate gets out of your heart. But the thing is that she was trying to trigger him. She was trying to trigger him the way it happens all the time, to where, like in the picture, we become the angry black man. So then we retaliate. Why are you so angry? Why are you so mad? Why are you so upset? You know, it's the same thing that, you know, we have to deal with in the news, you know. So I wanted to make sure I put this on here too. The Black Lives Matter. You know, I got into a conversation with our chief of police here about Black Lives Matter, and he was like, well, that organization, you know, their money, they're this, they're that. You know, if you only knew what they did with their money. And, you know, I looked at him and I said, see, that's the problem. That's what you're worried about. You're not even focusing on Black Lives Matter. You're not even focusing on what we're saying. We're saying, hey, wake up. People who look like us are dying, getting killed, getting knees in their throat. That's what we're saying. You know, and then I told him, said, and plus, all the advocacy, all the work that these people with the organization of Black Lives Matter has done, you know what, if they want to buy themselves a nice car, you go buy yourself a nice car. Because anybody else who's doing that kind of work, you look at the, you know, the preachers on TV, whatever, they got nice houses. They got nice cars. You know, they're living large. But as soon as somebody else does, then it's an issue. Because again, it's you're getting something that I don't have, and they always try to put a negative spin on that. And so I just wanted to make sure I'll put that in there. I know I'm over time, Dave. I'm sorry.
Marshall, I can listen to you forever. So you do you. Keep going. Seriously.
Yeah. And so where a lot of my activism began, it was in 2016. The picture here with the guy with the Confederate flag and the American flag. Me and my sister was there, and like I said, we lived in Florida for a long time, and Florida was pretty much a segregated area. And a truck drove by us, like revved his engine right in front of me and my sister, and she like ducked. She's older than me, and she looked up and she was in tears, and she looked and she said, Marshall, this is the shit I'm talking about. She said, we moved away from Florida to get away from stuff like this, and here we are in the mix of it again. And so I wasn't planning on going to this Love Trump Hates rally. I just wasn't a real political person or anything. I just try to vote for good people, and so someone talked me into going. So I went, and then this happened. And the next thing you know, I'm telling this guy off. I don't even remember what I said. I told people, I don't know, I blacked out. And, there was no profanity involved. There was no real, conflict. It was just discussion. And I felt like I was preaching the truth to him. And, he gets in his truck, he leaves, and my nephew comes up to me and he's like, that was a police officer. I said, no, it wasn't. He said, yeah, he was a police officer. And I said, a police officer wouldn't do something like that. He said, listen, uncle, I'm telling you, it was. And then I was like, wait a minute, how do you even know that was a police officer? Then he was like, you don't want to know. And so lo and behold, yes, it was a off-duty police officer. He ended up being underneath investigation for intimidation. And he ended up resigning, even though he would have been laid off. If a police officer resigns, then he can be hired somewhere else as a law enforcement agency. And so that's the reason why we keep getting bad apples, right? And so I ended up speaking on it a lot, people asking me about it. And so when the incident with George Floyd happened, the newspaper, of course, picked up, Marshall, what do you think? And we ended up having a Black Lives Matter rally, and that's where I'm speaking at here. And that's actually, Andy Phillips is on here too. He's the curriculum director at TCAPS. And after that, he reached out to me, and we made a great connection, and we started doing some great work up here at TCAPS with their, forming a social equity task force. And, even today we were looking at our, our board policy things. And so we're doing some stuff here. I believe that the voices were heard here in Traverse City to take some positive steps. And the picture below is we had a June 19th celebration get together, and that's my buddy Isaiah Smith. He was going to speak on it, so I had the pleasure of introducing him. So, like I said before, this is just a little bit of showing what media privilege is. The theater shooting suspect was brilliant. It was a brilliant science student. Police, Michael Brown struggled with officer before shooting. I mean, it's always they flip the switch. So I think that's it for me. That's my Northern Michigan E3 group. That's our anti-racist task force that we have up here in Traverse City. Very active, doing a lot of things. Our main goal, we call ourselves E3: educate, elevate, and engage. And that's what part of me having this discussion with you guys right now is to give you a little bit of education about me, elevate you, and engage you into doing this work with us. So that's all I have. I'm sorry we don't have more time, but if you guys have any questions, I'm here.
So, hello, my name is Tyra. I was about 15 minutes late, but I had a question. I see that you have a group that you're already working with in Traverse City. And I have a group I'm working with in Clarkston, Michigan. Okay. And so we're still trying to get some things going. Even in our district, how are you able to have a meeting with the sheriff? And what was the conversation, or how did you guys come together and decide maybe we need to speak with the sheriff?
Well, previously, after my run-in with the off-duty police officer, we started an ALLPACT, which is Advocate and Leaders for Police and Community Trust. And so I had a relationship with the law enforcement to where, as when we were getting ready to do our Black Lives Rally, they actually called me in and said, Marshall, we got, this going on. The Proud Boys said that they were coming up and all this kind of stuff. And so come to find out that there was 3 Black Lives Matters protests that was going to happen at the same time, at the same place. And then the Proud Boys were going to come up, and well, they called them the Second Amendment right. And I had to correct them right then. I said, "Listen, Chief, don't get it twisted. Every American has their Second Amendment right, so there shouldn't be any Second Amendment right group. Let's call it what it is: some racist people."
Exactly.
And so from that. They actually spoke at our Black Lives Matter rally. They actually spoke there, and we issued 10 demands for them. And the news caught hold of it, and the news just blew it up. And they put our law enforcement on blast too. And so we started meeting with the law enforcement once a week. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. Probably after the 4th or 5th meeting, I said, well, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to just sit here and have you guys have our wheels spinning in the mud when we're not going anywhere with this. And I said, you're not going to play me for no fool. I see what you guys are trying to do, and it's not going to happen here to me. And, the sheriff was like, well, Marshall, I'm sorry that you feel that way. And I was like, well, he told me you shouldn't feel that way. He says, Marshall, you shouldn't feel that way. And I said, listen, I don't care who you are. You don't tell me how I should feel. I feel how I feel. You don't tell me how I should feel. And so it took a while, but it also we went through 2 different changes. So one person was leading the discussion, and after that, she was like, I can't do it anymore. And so I stepped in and tried to help out. So it takes persistence. It takes resilience, and it takes patience. It takes patience, because when you're talking with law enforcement, they're going to get it from this side, they're going to get it from this side, just like at a school. And we were discussing on getting body cams, anti-racist policies, and they was like, well, why? There's no need for body cams here. Why do we don't need them? And I said, my simple answer is this: why wait until we need them? Right. Why wait until we need them? And then I threw it back on them too, is, this is coming one way or the other. Why not be a leader in the state of Michigan and say, we're getting body cams, this is what we're going to do.
Exactly.
So that was it. It's just forming those relationships. Like, most of the law enforcement around here know me, which is not a good thing. That's what I've been trying to avoid all my life. So, but I think Clarkston is in that Detroit area, right? Ann Arbor?
No, we're actually outside of Auburn Hills.
Auburn Hills. So I don't know. I think there is an ALLPACT in your region. And that's, again, it's Advocates and Leaders for Police and Community Trust. And it's through Michigan Department of Civil Rights. And, if you contact Michigan Department of Civil Rights, they can help you, and they will.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's so good though. Like, when people work together, then they get to see each other as people. Like, when the children have parents who are officers, and the officers come into our classroom and they see the children as the siblings of their like, and they see the children as like the friends of their kids, and the kids see the officers as the parents of their, like, and when you have these groups and you come together and you can talk and you can explain, and this is why this is a problem, or this is why this is a problem, and people can see other perspectives that they might not see. And I know, like you said, as many times as like to put a camera on and to catch something bad, you can put a camera on and catch something good, and those things can come out and help build relationships too. So I thank you so much to both of you and all of you who are working to make these conversations happen.
Oh, the sun just did something to make me really dark. Oh man, my life.
I wondered if in the heart of everything, someone turned the lights off on you in the office. And I'm like, that's just, no.
Dave, that has happened before. I've sat in my chair so long that the lights have turned off because they sense no movement. I don't know how to battle this. All right. So if there's no other questions, I put my email into the chat. If you want to email me with any questions about, there's a lot of stuff that we're doing. Even if you want to email me about the work we're doing with TCAPS, you know, I can put Andy to work too. So we can make sure we offer some help and support to the schools that want it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll definitely keep that in mind.
All right. So, all right. Well, thank you very much. Somebody just entered the waiting room.
Uh-oh.
I think it was one that disconnected just a minute ago. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I have a quick close down, if that's okay, Marshall, if I can take control of the screen real quick.
Yep, I will.
All right. So my children just came home, so you'll get to hear them too. I'd like to thank Marshall again for his time this evening. This is a very important conversation. We started it in the fall with a panel discussion. We've continued it here. We're going to keep having this conversation, so it's not over. But we are so lucky to have a friend like Marshall who's willing to bring us more on this topic. We really value our partnership, and we want to collaborate with you all the time. So you're going to get lots of emails from us, I promise, Marshall. As I mentioned at the start of this session, we'll have a video recap posted in the next 24 to 48 hours. We invite you to check out the remaining session in this series by visiting our website as well. And on behalf of the Michigan Council for Social Studies and all the people listed on your screen right now, I'd like to thank you for your time, attendance, and attention tonight. Thank you all, and have a great rest of your week.